This is the story of a flower that's native to South America, but whose name can be traced back to Canada. Blooming from early summer to autumn, its extraordinary color and form have inspired gardeners around the world. From the wilds of South America to the gardens of the world, this is the jewel in many a gardener's crown. This is the story of the begonia. This is Bath, Roman England at its best. Located on the northeastern edge of England's West Country, Bath is the kind of place you instantly fall in love with. With its rich soils and long summer days, Bath is also home to some of England's best gardens and specialist nurseries, among them Blackmore and Langdon. One of the oldest nurseries still trading in England, Blackmore and Langdon are world-renowned for their begonia breeding program. The begonia family, or Begoniaceae, is a big one, with more than 1,000 known species plus thousands more hybrids. Prized for their gorgeous rose or even camellia-like flowers, tuberous begonias are a gardener's dream. One of the few flowers that bloom from early summer to autumn. My own first memories of tuberous begonias are hardly inspirational. I was determined to plant them in a large, built-in planter beside my parents' front door. The soil was exhausted, and the sun never penetrated, so of course the experiment was doomed to failure. And although I was only 6 at the time, I didn't attempt to grow begonias again for years. The first official description of the begonia appeared in 1651 in the Nova Plantarum Animalium. There's also evidence that the begonia was well known in Asia long before the genus was officially named. One Chinese story recounts how a begonia sprang from the earth, watered by the tears of a lovelorn woman. Begonias are seldom mentioned in folklore, but 14th century minstrels are thought to have used them as a symbol for virtue and purity. This contrasts sharply with the Victorian language of flowers, where begonias came to symbolize dark thoughts and dangerous pleasures. During the 17th century, the race to introduce the plant to Europe was on. Charles Plumier, a Franciscan monk and avid plant hunter, made 3 voyages to the West Indies between 1689 and 1695. One of the most important botanists of his time, Plumier completed over 4,000 plant drawings and named over 50 new plant genera, including the begonia. The begonia as we know it today is a very different plant from those which were first discovered by early botanist and monk Plumier. Unable to classify this exotic new species into any known genus, he named the flower after a colleague, Michel Bégon, a French naval officer and botanist who later became Governor of Canada. The real history of the begonia begins in the late 1700s, when English plant hunters were sent to Bolivia and Peru to retrieve new plant species. Eventually, 5 species were sent back to Europe, and it was these plants that make up the genetic basis of today's modern tuberous begonia. As breeders and nurseries began to exploit their spectacular flowers and foliage, the tuberous begonia's popularity was assured. Today, they remain one of the most eye-catching garden flowers. Tuberous begonias are undoubtedly the crowning glory of the begonia family. Thriving in dappled shade or partial sun, their flowers can be single, double, ruffled, or rose-like. In baskets, flower beds, or pots, tuberous begonias add a dramatic touch to areas where many other flowers fear to tread. Not bad for a flower that's only been cultivated for 100 years. Despite the intense interest of plant hunters in the late 1700s, there's no record of begonia hybridization before 1860. Cultivation reached its peak just before World War I, when growing begonias became a fashionable hobby for wealthy green thumbs. The desire for larger, multi-petaled begonias produced a competitive one-upmanship among gardeners that's rarely been equaled since. The first double-flowered begonia was offered commercially by Victor Lemoyne in 1876 under the name of Begonia lemoynii. Since some of the double and semi-double flowers produced around this time looked like camellias or carnations, they were appropriately named carnation-flowered begonias. Among one early batch of seedlings, another hybrid emerged with quite a different form. With wider, overlapping petals, these hybrids became known as rosebud-centered begonias.